Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Answering Your Design Questions for the Molex Application Corner. I am Ken Coletta, and I am the sales trainer for distribution with Molex, and today we will be discussing robotics. Today we will be meeting with Scott Phillips, who is a robotics sales engineer with Sager, and also Nicole Stanek, who is also a sales engineer and is with Molex. Our objective for today's session is to meet with these sales engineers and to see how they connected with one another and landed this great opportunity. Our main focuses for our call today is to meet with those engineers, identify the opportunity, why they chose Molex, the value of bringing in Molex, and then finally, the ending application. So first, I will introduce Scott. And Scott, I would ask you, how have you noticed in the automotive industry for over 30 years that you've been involved? Now it looks like you're focused more into robotics.
Right.
How did you make that transition?
So it was kind of easy. The same types of systems that are being used in robotics are systems I've been dealing with in the industrial automation space for my career. And I guess examples would be like safety systems, controllers, PLCs, and PC control. They use sensors and scanners, which I've sold before. There's vision systems, power supplies, chargers, motion. So it was an easy transition because of my knowledge and background in selling those type of systems previously. So it was an easy transition, actually.
It's very interesting to go from the automation industry into the robotics. It's kind of a weird change for yourself. During those 30 years in the industrial automation, how have things changed in the last 30 years?
So I think there's been I think solid state components are really kind of mainstream now, where there used to be some mechanical devices in the automation space. I see there's a lot of wireless networking technology that has expanded over the years. I guess with the advent of the Internet of Things and edge computing and cloud computing, there's certainly been an expanded role for wireless 5G and 4G type of technology to get that information. Everybody wants information now. So I think I've seen that evolve over the years. And I see more recently in the last 10 years, there's been a real strong emphasis on safety and personal protection. Those are definitely some different things that have happened in the last 30 years as the whole automation space has evolved.
It's very interesting as well. And more of the focusing into the robotics, what trends are you seeing and the need to be addressed with interconnect solutions?
Yeah, I think miniaturization is huge, Ken. It just seems like higher density connectors are a real focus. Stuff like fine pitch to board and wire to board are definitely technologies that people are looking to really just populate the board as much as they can with no real estate left over. I'm also seeing a need for environmental considerations. Things like vibration ratings, higher IP ratings are also there's definitely a need for that in the interconnect space. Obviously, data connectivity is everywhere, so there's an increased emphasis on seeing that. And I think the life cycle is extended too. Customers are expecting this material to last a lot longer with interconnect and current technologies.
That's very interesting. In those 30 years, you must have seen so many things change over and how the industry has changed as well. It was very interesting how you made that transition and seeing those different trends as well from that side of the industry to robotics. Well, welcome aboard, Scott. I will now focus our topic over to Nicole. Nicole Stanek, welcome. And you've seen you've been in the industry for over almost 2 years now. And while you haven't been in the industry as long as Scott, do you feel your fresh perspective allows you to see things differently than those that have maybe biased based on their experiences?
Yes, I definitely believe that. So even though I've only been here or been with Molex and in the industry for just under 2 years, what I've been able to see with my experience is I've gotten a lot of different questions from a ton of different customers from my previous role. So I've seen any application that you can think of. I've gotten a ton of connector knowledge and use out of it. So it allows me to kind of get a broader perspective as to what we're selling now, not just what have we done, but what are the new features that we're doing, including different colors, different keying with the colors, the different sizes and new connectors. I'm not just stuck into, oh, we need to use the legacy product because that's what works. So it's a good fresh perspective to have.
Wow, that's interesting as well. How did you think of, getting into sales engineering? What made you go into this kind of field?
Yeah, so I have a mechanical engineering background, so I do have a little bit of a technical background, not necessarily electrical, but what I wanted to do was take the expertise that I had from school and bring that so that I can work with others in a collaborative environment. And what sales engineering has allowed me to do is work with a ton of different customers, which I think is just great because you can see, for example, with robotics, you've got the robotics arm, then you've got the warehouse warehouse robots that are on the floor. And then outside of robotics, there's medical and everything else. So it's a great experience to kind of get a broader view of the entire industry, and then maybe later on focusing on something a little bit closer.
Wow, Nicole, that's fantastic. To know we have that kind of person in the field, it's great to have that ambition and also excitement as well to do that kind of job. So we really appreciate everything you do and also the support that you have given for Molex. Now I'm going to focus into this opportunity between Nicole and Scott. Both of you, welcome to the show. And we're now going to focus back to Scott and really get into this opportunity. Scott, how did you identify this opportunity?
Yeah, so we have a local Molex regional distribution manager, Jeff Seifring, who I met early on last year when I started in last summer. And when I met with Jeff, I identified the robotic targets I wanted to go after in the territory. And I provided him a list. I was, looking for any kind of lead information, contacts, current information that I could get from Jeff. And Jeff came back and provided me with the customer contacts I requested. And I was able to reach out to those customers. And, by chance, this one contacted me with the application requirement. So it was truly a Molex lead. It's a great Molex success story. They really helped get me the information I needed to be able to pursue this opportunity.
That's great. And I know you said that you thought it would be a great opportunity for Molex, but what made that final decision to reach out to a respective associate for Molex?
Yeah, so we had for the application we had a wiring space that was limited to 4 inches by 4 inches inside of the robotic arm. So there was a need for small or miniature interconnect solutions versus the circular connectors. There was not enough space to be able to do that with circular. So I immediately thought of Molex for those kind of connectors based on what little time I've had with Molex since I started here. And, a key factor too, I think, was, the availability of samples for this first prototype in the alpha phase. It was critical that we got those samples in a quick fashion. So, I looked to local support for that. Jeff gave me the lead. He wanted me to reach out to Nicole to follow up and to see what we could do to move the application forward with Molex. So, I wanted local support to assist in the selection and procurement and to have that local contact to be able to interface with them. And I think Nicole's ability to identify the options available, qualify what types we needed based on her expertise was key. I mean, it was a great opportunity the way it progressed, and Nicole really took an active role to give me the answers I needed for the customer. And as it came out, we ended up using microfit and scuba connectors for the application. So honestly, it was a Molex generated lead, a Molex success story. I wanted Molex to be successful, being involved with this application.
Well, Scott, we appreciate the business. Was this right away? Did you know this was going to be a multiple product opportunity, or did you think it was going to be one and then lead to more?
It was, it was more of a robotic arm application. So using the interconnect, I think, in the robotic arm for spacing, I think was one of the key drivers in this. I know Molex makes some micro connectors that I think I thought would fit well into the application.
That's fantastic. That is great information. Going over to Nicole, Nicole, when Scott reached out to you, how did you feel that you could add the value and bring Molex involved in this opportunity?
Yeah, so I definitely, what Scott came to us with originally was kind of a big list of a ton of different connection points. And at that point, I knew that I could ask the right questions based on my prior experience as to what all I needed in order to just take a look at all of that, do a deep dive, and give a few different options to the customer, because they're not always going to like the first option that you have. So as many options as I could provide at the beginning was the what I wanted to do to start off with. So what I also can look at is kind of internally the Molex strategies that we have. So there's certain connectors that we want to prioritize, that we know it's going to be more readily available, that the lead time is going to be a little bit lower. So that's kind of where I started and where I thought that I could add the value, because I could see sample stock for the short-term lead time, and then as including the long-term lead time as if this were to go into production. Would it be readily available for the customer? So based off of that, I then picked Microfit and Scuba, just because those are two of our more popular lines, and definitely something that we had available in stock, both either in the United States or in some of our Asia sample plants.
And Nicole, were both of those products brought to your attention right from the get-go, or did you present those to Scott?
I presented those to Scott. So it started off with some connection points, looking at the current rating that he was looking for, what wire sizes that he needed, because you have to pick the connector based off the wire, that it was wire to wire, and then including the IP rating. I'm pretty sure he wanted IP67. So based off of that, Microfit doesn't have IP67. Not that I'm aware of right now, but it's definitely a more protective connector.
And Nicole, maybe elaborate a little bit for our audience. Exactly what is IP67?
Yes, so IP67 is a rating that we have. The first number 6 is rating against solids that are going into it. So it protects against 6 means that it's dust tight. And then the 7 at the end means that that's looking at liquids. So 7 protects you against water. And then 8 goes for Scuba, it's specifically IP68 rated, which isn't necessarily what they needed, but it goes the extra step as a preventative caution. So 68 just means that it can be immersed for longer periods.
Yeah, Jeff, what they wanted to do is they wanted to future-proof this application. It's an articulated robotic arm. And for now, it's just offloading, boxes and, freight from a tractor trailer truck onto a conveyor. However, in the future, they're looking to evolve this into maybe, into refrigeration areas. And by doing the Scuba connectors with the IP rating, they can future-proof the application. If and when they get into the different environmental considerations, depending on how they want to sell it. But that was one of the considerations.
Well, that's fantastic. And the great thing about Scuba is that they were only looking for the IP67 rating, and you went one step ahead and said, oh, hey, this connector is IP68, so it's more durable and rugged, and it's great for this application. So I'm sure, was that a big eye-opener for the customer as well, to see a better IP rating product?
Yeah, he was happy with it, definitely. Again, to future-proof it, he was all for it.
That's excellent. So the next thing too is just to go back and forth with you both. Just go through the process from which Scott reached out and Nicole, you just went back and forth. What was that time lapse or time frame between going back and forth with one another, making sure you grab the right information and the right products to show the customer?
Yeah, so I can take this.
When I initially met with the customer, I got a spreadsheet of all of his requirements in terms of how many loads he was supplying, both all the I/O, the signal requirements that they had in terms of the number of wires. And we put it into a spreadsheet, and I gave that to Nicole, and from there she went to work and picked everything out.
Okay. And Nicole, how did you respond with all the data sheets and information? Was it enough information for you to get started?
I asked a couple more questions, and we got that answered within a couple days. And then from having all of the questions answered that I needed, it was about a week before we provided him with 2 or 3 options per connection point. And then once we got his approval for those connectors that he wanted, he picked one option up for each of them. It was less than a week before he got his first set of samples, and then the final remaining balance of samples came in less than 3.5 weeks. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. We were able to get him samples to build a couple prototypes, and then he came back eventually in a couple months later asking for some more samples as well that we were able to get to him within 3 weeks.
That's fantastic as well. Again, with the samples, Nicole, I know you said that, if you're not mistaken, you said 3 weeks for samples. Was that the shortest lead time for those samples, or the other products were maybe longer out?
That was the 3 weeks was to get all of the parts. So the first week was all the samples that we had sitting in our sample plant in the United States. So that was able to get out as quickly as we could. The stuff that was over the remaining balance, because when we picked out the connector options, I made sure that there was sample stock available in either the United States or over in Asia. So that was part of the decision process, was what do we have available right now? And that was made aware to the customer, and that helped steer him at the end of the day towards picking that. So that's why it took 3 weeks, and a lot of that was just transit time at the end of the day.
And was there any issue of being told that the products are being made overseas rather than here in the U.S.?
Not at all. Not at all. The availability was based on getting that alpha prototype out. Not even an issue at all.
That's excellent. As far as the products as well, is the customer concerned about delays or anything like that? Are we seeing any delays on our side? Has that been discussed at all in the design process?
Well, I've been in contact with the customer basically on a monthly basis to see how he's, getting through the first prototype in this stage. And between what Sager has in stock and what Molex has in stock, we're in a really good position when he does go to production. And that's a constant communication I have, Ken, with the customers to make sure he knows what our stock position is for both Molex and Sager, and we're in really good shape.
That's great. As well as opportunities as well, Nicole, did you see any other applications that maybe Molex could benefit from that could help with this application going further?
Yeah, so during the prototyping phase, he ran into a couple issues with crimping. So one of the things that I'd sent over was both our off-the-shelf cable assemblies that we can give him just for prototyping phase, even though the lengths won't be exact. It's something that he could use right there. We also have pre-crimped leads, which I also sent over because that's always a little bit easier. That way you don't necessarily need to have the full cable assembly already made, but that's an option to not have to crimp. And then I also thought this was a great option for custom cables. So I did send him our custom cable creator, which is a ton of help if you're using only Molex content, which at this point we had designed in only Molex content. And it's a great thing to get drawings in less than 15 minutes and then get a quote and samples over as well. So it's definitely a good option. All those are great options moving forward, even though we haven't gotten to that point where he's ready for custom cables. It's something that he can do eventually.
That is fantastic that we were able to also get involved with other things as well. And that's the great thing about the engineers is you see these other possible expectations and possibilities in that application. Scott, going back, has the cable assemblies been thought of as well from the customer? And it really made them, kind of like a light bulb go off as to that could be expectations?
Yeah, I think as this opportunity evolves, the custom cables are definitely going to be brought into the fold. I think it's something that they should be considering, and they are. I think once they get through this initial, first 5, they have a 5-unit order now that they have to get done. But once they get done with this first one, I think that when they look back on it, they'll look at the advantages, I think, of having custom cables going forward and try to eliminate some of the variable challenges that they had going along the way. So I definitely think it's something that I guess always be a next step sell for these guys. And I think they're definitely something that they would consider for sure.
And Scott, you might have covered this before, but is this a new customer or is this fairly an older customer that we just went in there and offered this application?
So they've had an account with Sager for a while, but they are a startup. There's only 10 employees in the company, so I consider that to be a small startup. But they've been around since 2009, so it's new to me, but definitely not a new customer hasn't been out there for a while. So
that's great. And currently, at what stage are we with the customer today?
So right now they're still completing the first prototype for the 5-unit order that we expect to get at the end of this quarter. So they're still in the testing stage right now with the prototype.
That is fabulous. To the both of you, thank you so much. This is a great opportunity for both Sager and Molex to work together and find these great applications. So again, thank you both for the support. This was a great conversation and another application opportunity for both. We have about 10 minutes left in our session, and we'd like to open the floor and ask our audience, what questions do you have on both towards either Nicole Stanek or Scott, or both for that matter, about this application? So please go ahead and type in the comment section, and so I can address the engineers for your questions. Come on, everybody. Don't you be shy out there. I'm not seeing any comments yet.
Okay, I'll dive a little bit in terms of what we did with the connectors on this a little deeper. Basically, it's a articulated robotic arm, and in that there are 5 motors. And Nicole helped me spec out. Basically, they're using 3 16-gauge wires per motor at 48-volt DC. That's the power connector. And what the customer wanted to do is separate the power from the I/O signals. So on top of those motors and supplying power to them, we had 5 encoders, 5 homing sensors, and 3 brakes, basically, which were the I/O. And all of those used 22-gauge wires for the signal and I/O portion of it, with voltages between 5 and 12 and 24-volt DC. So that's the way the whole arm was wired out. And we're very successful. It worked out really well by separating the power wires from the I/O wires. It worked out great.
Scott, are they doing this all by hand as well as far as the crimping, or are they using machinery?
Right now they are, yes, correct.
So that could be another application as well for us to, for as far as application tooling to make it a faster production. You could go from doing hand crimping to using machinery to crimp those wires as well.
Yeah, we made them aware that there were crimpers available, but they wanted to get through this first prototype, and they were able to use some of the tools they already had. But there were definitely some challenges that added to the variables on this that I think will allow us in the next generation, or the next, the way we're evolving this opportunity, into having them invest in some tools or to go with the custom cable assemblies as the next generation of this opportunity. So.
Yeah, absolutely. As we all know in sales, each customer is baby steps. We're taking our first step on that stone and not jumping to the next before we complete that stone as well. So great job, exactly, waiting for those baby steps. I'm still not seeing any questions coming through. Still waiting a couple minutes just to see if anybody has last minute, get out of that shyness and hand them over. All right. Well, if there are any questions that you come up with after we end this session, please feel free to reach out to Sager, and they will have some questions either for Scott, and then Scott will relate them over to Nicole. You can also put them in this comment section, and we will then be able to view them afterwards as well. Join us next time as we talk about cable assemblies, and look out for that calendar invite and how we can incorporate cable assemblies into this application. Thanks, everyone, from all of us at Molex and also Sager. Thank you for your opportunities and a part of the sales enablement. We appreciate your support and your time today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
Got it. Thank you.